Namaste, and thank you for that beautiful Sanskrit verse. Tameva mata cha pita tameva, tameva bandhu cha sakha tameva. This, in a sense, summarizes the essence of what we may speak today, but we'll come to it a little later. Before we enter into the domain of relationship, which of all domains is perhaps the most complicated ones, and the reason is very simple because we human beings are most complicated, the most highly evolved of all these species, and yet we do not know who we are, where we are going, what is our goal. So we are the most uncertain of the lot. Having said that, we often, when we have these talks, readings, seminars, it's very natural because there is a seeking for knowledge, which is very good. We want to know what is a perfect way to live, perfect way to be, etc., etc. But the beauty of life and its challenge and its difficulty is that life is not a rule book. So there are no universally applicable ways, but there are universally applicable truths. There is a difference between the two. So there are some universal truths. If we understand that, life becomes beautiful. But if we try to apply it, the whole trick lies there. If we try to make it into a universally applicable action or way of life, then we tend to often create problems and difficulties. This is true in human relationships. This is true everywhere. So this is the first thing we need to understand, that life is not a rule book, whether we like it or not. And it is good it is not, because if it were a rule book, we all would be straight-jacketed into fixed formulas of life, which become dogmas. You know what happens when people have rules about relationships. So either it breeds a kind of hypocrisy in a society, or it leads to breakaway revolts of a much worse kind than if you allowed a certain kind of flexibility. In any case, we are moving towards an age when we will need vastness, freedom, and flexibility or plasticity as a way of life. So only those institutions are going to survive. And to an extent, relationships do carry an institutional baggage with them, and only those relationships which are going to be based on something vast, something freer, something plastic, and yet behind it all something nobler. So that's important to understand. So the more we try to bring it into a closed jacket, a kind of tight way of living from which you cannot go this way or that way, the more difficulties and challenges it will create. And that's what we see today, that society is revolting against it. Another thing is that, in human life, we see that mind has a natural tendency to pick up an idea and turn it into a dogma. That's how certain codes of conduct and, rules of living or laws which come into existence. And then people fight that dogma and create another dogma. So let me give an example. For instance, there is a religious dogma that a relationship means this. Do this, do that, and there are do's and don'ts, and people are supposed to conform to it. So people want to fight it, because it's an age when a new creation is going to come into existence. So the old has to be demolished. So there will be people who are going to fight against it. But when they revolt, they create another dogma. It's something like, when the movement of women liberation came, it took a swing to the other side and became almost like a cult that, well, I'll do whatever I feel like doing. That way we create a dogma out of even the urge to freedom, without really understanding what this urge to freedom would really mean. So what is important in any given framework, to understand what are the core issues, as I said, what are the universal truths which are behind things, or behind creation, the technology of creation, the science of creation, the art of creation, the joy of creation. And then we can proceed on that. For instance, one of the things which is very obvious, if you just look at the stars, you see people worship Mahalakshmi now. Lakshmi ji's day is coming, and we want to worship her, and people ask money. I don't know why they ask money, they get trouble on their heads. They should ask for something more enduring. Money will come. Money is needed. But anyways, if you look at this world, just look at the stars. one thing that strikes us is that there is a principle of harmony which has gone into it. You look at the atoms, there is a principle of harmony. You look at life in general, there is a balance, there is a harmony which life instinctively seeks despite all its extravagances. So if you try to shoot in one direction, there is a recoil in another. Why? Because again, the principle of harmony. So once we understand this, harmony is important when we consider relationships. It's the most important thing. But what really harmony means? Does harmony means that one person becomes a martyr just to maintain harmony? That's not harmony. Harmony is a very beautiful balance. See, when a star starts absorbing all others, then it's not creating harmony, it's just becoming a black hole. That's not the way to create harmony. Harmony is something wherein there is an equilibrium of all the energies, forces that are driving a human being in relation to the world. Meaning thereby that individuals are not crushed for creating harmony. Nor is the society crushed by the individual, trampled by the individual in trying to create harmony. That is the beauty, to an extent in Indian thought. When we go back to a certain period of time, we see that there are ways and means that people had tried to create a harmony between the individual and the society. But there were very challenging instances, and during those moments, they had to evolve new ways and mechanisms, So let me take one story as an example. So let me make this story into two parts. So first part is, we all know, in today's context also with all the modernity, if some lady says that she has 5 husbands, so, it'll be like, I'm sorry, Karwa Chauth day today, so I shouldn't be speaking. Blasphemous. But the point is that look at the Indian thought that Draupadi had 5 husbands. Now she had 5 husbands again because of a strange thing. Mother of Pandavas, she suddenly says that share it, whatever you have got together, share it. Now, logically, if you see, when she came to know, obviously she lamented and she told them that no, you don't have to do this, I didn't know. But Pandavas followed that. Now, why did Pandavas follow that? It's very interesting. They could have simply said, Mom, yeah, you just mistaken, Mom. You didn't realize that it's not an object, it's a person, a woman, and it is an affront to the dignity of a woman to, marry 5 people. But when we look at that whole story, it's one of the most challenging stories of the Indian scriptures. There are many others. So in the story, the Pandavas say, yes, okay, no, she will be 1 wife to 5 husbands. Now, how do they justify it? Now, if you look deep within Mahabharata, there is a thread which runs. And that thread is basically dharma. So how do you bring in dharma here? So there is dharma where you have to, obey the parents, but that is not the issue. We normally would take it that they were just blindly obeying the mother. Pandavas were trained in a way of life where they always believed, if you look at particularly Yudhishthir, that there is a deeper wisdom which operates in life. Now this is the beauty of Yudhishthir, and this is where this deeper wisdom, which sometimes he falters because he cannot understand that wisdom, and there Krishna steps in to remind him that wisdom is not a straight-jacketed formula. But that wisdom operates and he doesn't know why. And he follows it. The beauty of that incidence is that there is indeed a deeper wisdom operating in their life. And but for Draupadi, it would have been near impossible to hold them together. So Draupadi, by coming together, all this would not be narrated. But what would have gone by in the minds of the Pandavas, she kept them, held them together. This is something very amazing and interesting. Their whole mission depended on Draupadi keeping the 5 Pandavas together. But the story doesn't end there. Now there is a problem. Problem is that this is against the Kul Dharma, against the Maryada, and this is the objection raised against the Pandavas when they go back and want to claim their throne. So everybody says this is against Dharma, you're not supposed to do it. So a lady who has done it is not a good woman, whatever be her lineage of birth. And such a lady cannot become the empress. So this was the logic which is given. And if you read through the narrative, how Yudhishthir justifies that whole action. And eventually, now this is not a dialect on Mahabharata, but eventually what happens is they have to decide how they are going to have this kind of a life together. So they they make a rule. Now this is nowhere in the rule book. That's why I said life is not a rule book. It's unique situation. So they make a certain kind of rule for themselves. And the rule is that for 1 year, because you see, the challenge is when two people love each other, when they are married to each other, they are supposed to belong to each other completely. So there is this rule that 1 year, completely she will be with one of the Pandavas. And to that extent that nobody has a right to interfere, nobody has a right even to visit when the two are together. That right is taken away. It requires a tremendous degree of both sanyama as well as plasticity. And we know that one of the moments when Arjuna does transgress, he has to take the punishment and he has to travel all the way. Now, this is a challenge which was thrown at them, a challenge which was thrown by none else but the Lord of Destinies itself. Why? Because what is the larger picture in the backdrop is that Yudhishthir has to establish a kingdom of Dharma. Now, he has to understand all the subtleties of Dharma. If Yudhishthir were to create Dharma as a rule book, then you don't need him to be, the child of Dharma. Dharma is something which is unfolding all the time. This is one of the fundamental truths. That's why I'm speaking about it. It applies in relationship as much as everywhere else. What is the Dharma? Now, Dharma is not a rule book. Dharma is something which unfolds, which takes us towards something greater, something deeper, something higher, something nobler. And this is revealed in that second story of Draupadi, which is connected with it. See how Dharma unfolds in human life. So when Draupadi, as there is a very interesting conversations written by Sri Aurobindo on dialogues of the dead. And along those lines, Nalnida also wrote a few. So one of them is that Draupadi goes and after she drops the physical sheath, she goes and she has a conversation with Savitri. And, there is a discussion that how come you are not only you have got a place among the celestials, among the heavenly beings, but incidentally, Draupadi is one of the Prata Smarni. Look at the vastness of Hindu thought, if I may say so. So you are one of the Prata Smarni. She is one of those whom to remember in the morning is something regarded as sacred. So she says, why? What wrong have I done? He says, well, weren't you married to 5 of them? So she says, yes, but I loved only one. Now comes the problem. He says, then you again deviated from Dharma because you were partial to one of them. So it's true that basically you were partial to Arjuna. So she says, no, that's not true. Then Bhima, who killed Kichak, no, that's not true. Then Sahadev, the smart and handsome, no. Then Yudhishthir, surely the emperor, no. Then Nakul, who was such a sweet little fellow, no, none of them. Then whom did you love? Someone else? She says that, well, all my life I had in my heart only one, and that was Krishna. Now you see, if you combine these two stories together, it brings the sense of Dharma, which is one of the fundamental truths. Now when we understand it, in every issue, even relationship issue, I shouldn't say even relationship, one of the nuttiest issue, we can remember it, and if we keep that in our heart, then many things can be resolved. So this is one part we need to understand, that Dharma is in the heart and we should deep within go and feel for it. It's not something which the mind can calculate or fix into a rule book. As I said, moral science textbook. Moral science textbooks, the only dharma that it serves is that you used to get good marks. I don't know whether now it is there in schools or not, but when I was studying, the only reason why we studied was because you get good marks and it adds up to your total. So, so much for the moral science. But not that morality is bad. Morality has its place, but we must understand it. To be moral is certainly a great quality. To transcend morality is only for those who have really gone beyond and are ready for it. But morality is not a rule book of life. It must have a fulcrum around which it moves. And that fulcrum is Dharma, which we will speak about. a little bit as we come through. The second principle, which is important to understand, is that life is evolving and changing. So, again, one rule to be applicable for all times, forever, is a dangerous doctrine. I know there are some religions, and I know one particular one where the couple wanted to separate themselves, and the man came and finally he quoted, he knew that I have a bit of spiritual bent, which he confused for a religious bent. And he suddenly said, Hamare kitab mein likha hai, it's there in our book, that once married, married forever. Married in heaven, suffered on earth, but broken only in heaven. So you have no choice. So I said, where is it? So he brought me the book and showed me. I had read the book, fortunately. So he showed me, he said, look here, these are the things, tenets of a man to be, that he has to, a wife who has to follow. So he said, okay, now tomorrow you ask your wife to see me with the rules that a man is supposed to do. So then, it was all very on shaky grounds. Then he came, of course, said, see, he doesn't listen to even one single thing, and he wants me to follow all the rules conveniently. So these are very interesting dilemmas which are generated because the mind sticks to the outer shell rather than to the inner spirit. So whenever we have any of these doctrines, in rule of law, it is very simple. Mens rea and actus rea. Behind the act, what is the intention? But sometimes in religious books, it becomes a very difficult thing because we are caught in the words. In Indian thought, it's very easy. Shabd brahmati vartate. Wherever there is a confusion, go to the spirit, don't become a slave to the word. Shubindo speaks about it, and of course the Gita speaks about it and reminds us that ultimately the dharma is here. Now, what is the beauty of dharma? It is always evolving. It is an unfolding. It's there as a fundamental truth behind existence, meaning thereby that if you try to deviate from it, you will be hit either outwardly or inwardly. But at the same time, it is not something fixed, it is fundamentally evolving. So what is the fundamental truth of existence with which we should base our relationship on? And I think that's a most important thing to understand, whether it's mother, father, wife, husband, friends, whoever. So we have to base it on this fundamental truth that there is the divine presence in all. This is a wonderful place to practice this, is human relationship. Because it's very good to sit in meditation and say that divine is within me. It's very easy to look at these stars and say, oh God, you are there. Nikhil Brahmand mein ek tu hi hari. So, it's wonderful. It's very easy to look at plants and say, this is divine presence. Even look at animals. Even probably, a tiger, you can be filled with compassion, like Madam Alexandra David Neal, that, he is hungry after all. So what if he eats me? It's okay. And she sat in meditation. We know this story of Mr. Tiger, how she relates. See how our relationship makes a difference. So normally one would respond with fear. What does Dharma says? Dharma says compassion. So she is a Buddhist who is going up the mountains in Tibet, and suddenly she comes across, people had told her, Madam, don't travel alone. It's a place where there is a tiger who eats human beings. See, it doesn't matter. So she goes. Now, a lot of people say it doesn't matter. But when the situation arises, it begins to matter. So suddenly in front, she sees this, she sits in meditation and she feels an eerie presence. And she looks, opens her eyes and sees a tiger. So she has a choice. The choice is to start shivering in fear. Choice is to blame herself. Oh my God, why did I make this choice? I should have listened to them. I should have... See, something similar in the Pandava story. Voice of sanity. All this I should have listened. Why am I doing this? But then another thought took over her, which is the, idea of compassion in Buddhism. The way she understood. She said, well, if I have come here and I am face to face with the tiger who is a man-eater, I have come all the way. Destiny has brought me, modified my thoughts in a way, and I am here. Maybe if he is hungry, let him eat me if he is hungry. So she was overtaken with compassion for the tiger's hunger, that he is not really wanting to harm me. He is not violent for the sake of violence. Only human beings can do that. So he's not violent for the sake of violence. He's hungry, therefore he's attacking me. And then she sat in meditation, dedicating herself to Buddha and saying, "Oh Lord," they don't say Lord, but it's like, if such be the destiny, then let it be. Minutes changed into many minutes. I won't say hours. But suddenly she felt nothing has happened, and when she opened the eyes, the tiger was gone. This is a true story the mother recounts. So, in life, very often we don't realize that we can get into a cycle or a net purely by our reactions. And then it's like literally a storm in the teacup. So, what literally is the storm in the teacup? You have a little something, you don't like the tea, and okay, you can ask for another tea, or one day if you don't drink tea, nothing is going to happen. But why is my tea like this? There are people who will fight with the persons in the restaurant, or if they are married, the unfortunate person has to take the brunt. Why I made this mistake, big mistake in my life, that I made a tea without salt, sugar. Rather put salt into it. Maybe next time she'll put it to make sure that. So, then what happens? That it was very simple actually. But the problem becomes complicated. This is a exaggerated example, but really speaking, not so exaggerated. These little things begin to multiply. I was very surprised when I read in one of Sri Aurobindo's letters about quarrels. Mother says one can live without quarreling. So she says, I am very surprised why human beings quarrel. This is Divine Mother. We feel here somebody doesn't quarrel, we say, everybody quarrels. Even I have heard people say 2 days back, "Arey, marriage mein to hota hi hai khitpit, gussa, anger, all this is part of but it is because they love each other very much." I said, if that is love, I think better to stay away from that kind of stuff. Love is meant to, if you are angry, the more you are angry, the more you love. These are strange doctrines, Please don't believe in all these things. Say that, well, I am not strong and capable enough to harbor the true energy of love. At least one will progress. Rather than saying that, I am angry because I have love. Now, anyways, so these things happen. So I read this letter of Sri Aurobindo where he says, people quarrel. Most of the time, quarrels take place because of the lower vital over very little things. Then I started observing very attentively, what are these little things? And I realized sometimes just a word somebody speaks, and there is a vulnerable moment, and the switch, the MCP gets cut off, blown off, and the whole. And it is so silly. When you look back, you realize it's so silly. And then I realized most of the quarrels are because of these small little things. I don't know if big quarrels take place over big issues. Big issues are handled in a different block. But these small little quarrels created perpetual disharmony and lead to bigger issues. So then that's the time when I learned something else which I can share. And Mother speaks about it, the harm done by the incontinence of speech. It is something which we should write it in whatever golden letters or diamond letters, inscribe on our heart, put it down our throat. It's a beautiful passage on the harm done by the incontinence of speech. We speak unthinkingly. And invariably, because speech is the medium to build a bridge. But that story of Tower of Babel, where people came together to build a bridge together to heavens, whatever their idea was. But the story is very interesting. So when they were trying to do it, the devil thought, oh, this will be too much. They all will go to heaven. Our business will fail because our business, dukaan yahi chalti hai. So, how are we going to run our show? So they said, okay, anyways, see, they have to coordinate. How do people coordinate? They coordinate with speech. He said, Abhi, bas, I'll get into this. That story, that film 3 Idiots, and there are other stories, films like that, and how you just alter sometimes a word. And what happens? Their speech became a means to create confusion and chaos. So that's the story of the Tower of Babel. That's how this speech is called as Babel, children's speech, which nobody can understand except mother. This is a very interesting symbol. So, anyways, mother speaks about Auroville as a Tower of Babel in reverse. Now you see, why do mothers understand this? What is the child saying? How does she know that now when the child is crying, it means this? When the child is another kind of cries, another third kind of cries, another is the same cry. And that is the power of love. So, any relationship, see, that's something which I often remind, the difference between a European civilization, which anyways is crumbling now on its own. Nobody has to do anything because it cannot endure forever. Its basis is faulty. And the Indian civilization, Asiatic, but since we are talking of Europe, but in this context I may say Indian, is that while in the European civilization, let's say a thing like marriage is a legal contract. It's a document. It has to be, even now, you get married if it's not a legal document, that's what decides. Why? Now, why do people go to court to get married and turn it into a legal document? If you go to its basis, there is mistrust. You are starting on this footing, what if something goes wrong? You see, what is the basis of it? What if something goes wrong? Then, how am I going to get alimony, whatever it is called? Alimony? Okay, whatever. So, how am I going to, So, it starts on a wrong footing. And you see, when people go to court, it's the most nightmarish experience. Trying to settle an issue where people are separating. It's not only emotional pain, but so much falsehood, slander, lies. I have seen it in so many instances. And so I keep advising people, don't take this route. But in India, what was the basis of marriage? The basis of marriage was basically, there is the witness, the sun, the fire, and we marry. Now who is the witness? The witness is sun, the fire. What is that? Representative of the divine consciousness. Now when you follow life based on that there is, the basis is dharma, the basis is truth, most importantly the basis is love, then what happens? That you are focused around that. You are not focused around rights and responsibility. This is a very, very modern way of looking at it, that I have my rights and I have my responsibilities. Very good. It's nothing wrong with that. People have their rights and responsibilities which go together and try to balance it. But basically, what is my journey about? Is it all about rights, responsibilities? I am on a trail of what is called as truth. I am on a trail of my upward evolutionary urge. And my only right, the true right of every individual, is to grow into that which is in his depths. This is the Indian thought about life. Now, when we take that as the benchmark and the standard, then it's very easy to take decisions. In any relationship issue, what is going to help me to grow into the fullness of dharma? After all, what is dharma? Dharma, it's one of the most difficult things to define. But in one line, if one has to say, all that helps us to grow individually and collectively toward the true, the right, the beautiful, the good is dharma. You see, there cannot be any wider law. People often say that they mistake it for religion, and then there are inter-religious faiths, and sometimes people ask me, why are you speaking, don't you think the Gita and the Bible and the Quran, let me put it more bluntly, are on one par? I say, no, it is not true. It's not true. I can't speak something which is untrue, and I have reasons to say that. Now, you see, the moment you say that there is a journey collectively and individually, then you don't have to please anybody, you don't have to, a lot of things happen simply because people are trying to please others, leading a life of falsehood, untruth. But if we understand, now what did this lady choose? She chose dharma, and her dharma was compassion. And that was something so beautiful. What was the relation between her and the tiger? She formed a bond which is something unbelievable. And the bond was the bond of dharma. That deep within, compassion suddenly had this power to knit them together in a different thing. And that tiger responded. He understood, he felt. The mother speaks about it in one of the very beautiful writings. She speaks about right attitude. And she says, in the face of a challenge, even if a terrorist has come in front of you. Now, of course, if you have the courage, if you have the gun, if you have the means, by all means you should fight. It's better to, face life with courage in face of danger. But inside, she says, you should not bring in a vibration of fear. Now, when you bring in a vibration of fear, it attracts like anything. See, recently this film had come, Kashmiri Files. Now, what happened to that community where people were supposed to live together in peace and harmony? Now, I have given a whole talk on it, so I don't want to get into that. But basically, when you are face to face with such a situation, no one could fight. At the same time, everybody was deep inside, afraid, full of anguish. Probably, that still continues. You even sometimes identify with the aggressor. All kinds of chaotic responses begin to take place. So, what is important in a given situation is, first of all, when people, as I spoke about speech, when people, one of the most common causes of misunderstanding, confusion, not most common, probably it is the most common, not one of the most common, is to learn to guard our speech. You can't guard somebody else's speech. So, to always reflect a little and then speak. There is a beautiful letter of Sri Aurobindo on psychic self-control of speech. It has those 6 points. That was one of the things which I had written down, taken a nice printout, put in my room cupboard. This is something to be practiced. Of course, it must become spontaneous. There are such beautiful things in Indian thought, satyam vada, but also priyam. So you have to speak truth, but truth can be spoken in a very blunt, harsh way. So while you are speaking the truth, the sound, the whole vibrations are very disruptive. But you can speak truth in a beautiful way. This is a whole art of communication, which is so germane, core to any relationship issue. Even when the other person is, one of the things which I have often very humorously used to tell my students, that see, when your spouse is getting very angry, so one way is that you respond with anger, or you leave in a huff and you are very annoyed, and you also tell. The person says a few things, and you give it what is called in today's time giving it back. I gave it back. This is a common advice we get. अच्छे से दिया. क्या दिया? You multiplied anger. The other way is stay quiet inwardly. And how can you stay quiet? Invoke the divine presence. You know that the other person is not being oneself. There is also the compassion. But also, sometimes a little humor helps. Now, it may not help in every situation. Sometimes it can aggravate. But a humor helps. And there I used to give this example of one of the ancient techniques. गुस्से में और भी अच्छी लग रही हो. Now, please don't, it's a weapon. Don't misuse it. If you use it at the wrong time, you had it. That acha will become Durga to Kali. But when it's something like basically what you are trying to assure, that look, regardless of your appearances, I still love you. I still care for you. There's a very beautiful little saying of the mother. Bitterness is on the surface. In the depth, there is only love. Bitterness is an illusion. Even when people hate each other, isn't it love which has taken this form? Because they love each other. Now, only, yes, somebody who doesn't understand reacts like this, but people even say this, that, okay, I understand all this, but why should I be the only one who should practice it? Well, because you want to evolve or not, it's your choice. If you want to evolve, you have to practice it. Second, I asked another question that, well, tell me, between the two of you, who is more mature? Who is the wiser? Now comes a problem, because, nobody wants to accept that I am not a wise person. So, now if you are wise, the responsibility is yours. That's why what I believe that, when there are two people, I don't say that elder is equivalent to wise. But in general, either the person who is, let's say, in a higher position, who has studied more, learnt more, is sometimes just by age you have gathered a little more experiences. Responsibility is that person's. you can't blame the other person that, you reacted like this, therefore I reacted. You are the one. This is a very convenient way of living. But this is not dharma, simply because you are seeking your own personal pleasure and comfort. So, what would be dharma? Dharma is that she or he is a soul trapped in ignorance. When you read Sri Aurobindo's new psychology, it's in human cycle, he says sociology. He says that who will be the forerunners of the new race? And then he says they will understand that they will not treat the criminal and the saint as units of a social problem. It's a bit humorous also. Saint is also a unit of a social problem because he lives in a kind of freedom, he lives in a kind of compassion which is not consistent with the way people live. But the criminal as souls, or as souls which are either trapped in ignorance or souls which have come out and they are leaning down to help each other. Now, this is where we have to understand that there are two aspects of relationship. One is the framework, and there is a deeper truth which goes beyond frames. And the mother gave a very interesting example when people asked her how to create human unity. So she says very simple. Nowadays people talk about interfaith dialogue, one of the most nonsensical thing ever. Maybe NGOs get a lot of money, I don't know, because everybody holds on rigidly. It's not about interfaith dialogue. Evolve beyond religions. Evolve beyond, the framework of ideologies. That is a difficult task, more challenging than, organizing a meeting in a 5-star hotel. But the important aspect is that when we look deep inside, she gave a very simple solution. She was asked, how can humanity become one? She said, by becoming conscious of our origin. Now, this simple exercise, that regardless of whatever we may have on the surface, fights are there, bitterness is there, acrimony, all kinds of things are there, human nature, let's not speak about that. But deep within, do we not believe that there is the divine presence? Is it not true that we are all children of the same divine mother? Deep within. Now, it doesn't mean that, let's take the extreme example of the Gita. Does it mean that I lay down my arms like Arjuna? No. Sometimes you may have to take an outer measure, an outer step. But always deep within, your heart has to be free of hatred. See, this is the beauty. Sri Aurobindo reminds us that, again, the difference between Indian way of life and the European. European lays stress on action. And that's why people say, and rightly so, that Gandhiji was more of a Christian, not a Christ, but a second kind of, he was colored by Christian ideology and therefore non-violence. Outwardly you remain non-violent. But Indian thought, what does the Gita say? You can take arms if necessary, but inside harbor no hatred. Now this is a much more challenging task. It's not easy. It's much easier to say, okay, make a rule of life, I will never lift arms. That's okay. After some practice, you can do it. But much more difficult that I'll keep my heart clear of hatred. I've seen, it's very, very interesting. I have, actually, what I'm sharing, something which you can practice. I've tried to incorporate as a practice in my daily life. Catching myself if somebody has said something or done something which has seemingly hurt you, not seemingly hurt you for a moment, and you want to react in a certain way. Now, before your feelings are beginning to rise in the heart, observe them, catch them, that there should be never any ill will. Clear the heart of that cleaning. Minimum advantage will be that your heart will be at rest. You will feel supported by the grace, despite everything. Next step, pray to the Divine Mother that may her heart or his heart also is cleansed of this kind of feeling because he is suffering. So when we start looking at human beings as souls that are trapped in ignorance, they are their own victims, then we will get the right approach towards, dealing with this. Of course, as I said, there are situations where you need to, as I said in the Gita, where things don't, and there is a wrestle of ideas going on in the arena of the world. By all means, you have to fight that idea because through the clash of ideas, the universe is born. But this fight should not be with a sense of hatred. This is a very thin line which separates. Because if you are nurturing hatred, if you're nurturing anger, then you are not helping things. It's becoming more and more complicated. Meaning thereby, I'll come back to that aspect, now to that famous Sanskrit verse. When mother was asked, if you have to be a good teacher, what are the qualities you must have? So she gave a list of 5 qualities. So one of them was, that he has to be a good psychologist. He must understand what's happening inside. And then, of course, he must have the knowledge of the subject. And then very important, at the end, he says, most importantly, he must understand the relativity of all knowledge and must be himself ready to progress, to know more, to grow more. And then he says, in the end, in one word, to be a good teacher, you have to be good, you have to be a yogi. Now, I say the same thing with regard to relationship. To be a good husband, you have to be a yogi. Now, it has 2 implications. Don't expect your husband or wife to be Mr. and Miss Perfect if they are not yogis. And even if they are yogis, please understand, there are yogis and yogis in different stages of development. So if you are expecting that is very unreasonable expectation. At one place, mother says to want somebody who is perfectly understanding, perfectly loving, perfectly caring, and only for you, mind you. It means you are wanting a personal divine in your service. A person who will do that will be too vast in one's consciousness. That's why people say, admire a saint, never marry. Because saints have too many burdens to bear on their head. So the thing is that, deep inside, we must always carry that. The inner heart should be always cleansed of all this muck. So we should practice some kind of yoga. In ancient times, very interestingly, this truth was understood in a very interesting way. But unfortunately, in its application, it was only for the woman that it was reserved. And I would say the right and privilege of being a sati. Sati had nothing to do with jumping into the fire. All that practice is nonsense and obviously horrifying. And Johar is different. So people got mixed up. Johar was a very different thing. That was when there were invaders who captured you and they did all kinds of things. So people preferred that we'll prefer to die into the flames rather than be brutally captured and enslaved. Many of these customs came like that. One of them, for instance, is Karwa Chauth. Since we are at it, Karwa Chauth is typically in those areas which were very war prone. Every time the husband went, you didn't know, whether he'll come back or not. So you see how you are connecting it with the moon. So moon, by the time it comes, and invariably on Karwa Chauth, the fellow is, for some reason, I don't know why, too shy, or people are calling him and he is taking his own time. And people are running. You see what happens through the day you are praying. Because those belts, it's war. It's not something which really to again apply it like a rule of life and all kinds of things. But that's a different story altogether. Let's not, dishearten people who want to wear nice dresses and eat nice food, and husbands who want to be worshipped, God knows why. It's the age of feminism. They should start worshipping the lady. But the beauty is, it's true that only a woman can love truly. And that's why the yoga of a woman, through the power of truth in love, was reserved for her. And it was called a sati. Who was a sati? Not somebody who jumped into fire, because they were all living legends. Not just living, they're living legends whose names are Anusuya, Arundhati. Many people don't even know. It's unfortunate. Their stories should be... It is said that they had the capacity to even slow down the motion of the stars and, so that the day doesn't emerge. We know Savitri. She's a sati. And she brings back the dead to life. Now, what was it based on? It was based on she turned her marriage life or conjugal love into a means of yoga. That's how Sri Aurobindo says that what is Savitri about? It is conjugal love conquering death. Now, conjugal love has all the shades of human love. In all its heights, depths, everything. No other love really carries that. So there is a possibility in human love to touch those divine heights. And if we look at it like that, then just as all life can become yoga, even human relationships can become yoga, should become yoga, I would say must become yoga. Now, in this human relationships becoming yoga, there are three basic steps. First is when we want to take up yoga and those around us don't understand us. The moment you do something which is out of the normal way, you be sure that you will be misunderstood, and if you are being misunderstood, you are on the right track. Take it as an axiomatic truth. Yeah, that's it. Otherwise, people often say when they come to ashram, sometimes they have to fill a form. I have to certify that they are normal. So people come and I write normal. So they say, you won't ask, interview anything. I said, the fact you are here means you are not normal. Mean thereby, I said, see, if you were normal, you would pursue normal aims. Why would you come to ashram in the prime of your youth and want to pursue yoga? It means, but it's a good abnormalcy. Thanks to this abnormalcy that man can attempt towards supernormalcy. So, the moment you start leading a life which is not run-of-the-mill of kind of life, you take it that you'll be misunderstood. If you are understood, then you are one of those rare, fortunate fellows in life. Thank your stars and God's grace. But that's okay. But even if you are misunderstood, turn this all into a yogic practice. One of them is stepping back. So stepping back is that when things happen, say something has happened in the evening or morning, or usually things happen in the evening and late evenings, because all the forces of darkness are at play. That's why one of the rules that I tell people, if you have a fight, resolve it before you sleep. Don't carry it in your sleep, because you will open your doors to all kinds of attacks. How you resolve it? It's between people. If nothing else, offer it to the divine, pray to the mother, tell her all this has happened. Pray for the other person also, pray for yourself and pray for the world. Pray that this disharmony disappears from the earth, then go to bed. If you don't do it, you wake up with a migraine and a heavy head. So one thing is that, whenever this happens, when people don't understand you, understand that you are on a journey to yoga, and all these events are really speaking, they're mere trifles. They are literally ripples given the extent of where you want to reach. And I give this example that if you are going from, let's say, from your house in Pondicherry to the Samadhi, just to take an example, suddenly somebody catches you on the way and starts hurling abuses, and do you want to get caught and get into all kinds of fist fight? And the ashram is going to close. What are you going to do? You will rush. You will say, I'll sort out this later. You will rush because you know you have to reach there. So to always remember what is my goal. Relationship is not a goal. Relationship is a path. So it's so important to remember that, it's a training ground to cultivate more tolerance, more generosity, more wideness, suppleness. It's a training ground. And I must say, a wonderful training ground. Because the only person who will freely criticize you is those who are near to you. That their right and their privilege. And it's good, as Kabir has said, Nindak niyare rakhi, Rahim has said, Nindak niyare rakhi. Keep Kabir. So keep the person who criticizes you, at least there is somebody who is going to tell you all kinds of things. So how do we handle this criticism? Look inside, see, maybe there is a blind spot you are not able to see, the other person is seeing. Maybe the other person is exaggerating. Take that aspect which is true and keep it. It's a pearl. Mother uses the word pearl of price. You have paid your price. What is that price? You have managed to hear and survive the criticism and the assault. Now that you have done it, extract that little pearl. Keep it. It's precious. You don't have to go through it again and again. Discover that yes, there is something true in that. And whatever is untrue, discard it. You don't expect another person to know you. Only the divine knows. This is something we discover over a period of time. So all this idea of sharing and caring is good. Caring, tenderness, affection are psychic feelings. But all this sharing with a friend to, this is okay, good if you have somebody. But ultimately it is the divine who is the friend. So all this helps in turning towards yoga. This is the first stage. First stage is when everything is turned into yoga. And we have that story of Mirabai, when she asked one of the ladies that, well, Bua, is marriage okay? Because my parents are looking for a boy. And the Bua said, well, it's wonderful. My husband makes all the morning breakfast, lunch, dinner. I can devote my time to Hari Bhakti. He's the bestest possible specimen. Mira says, I have not heard of this. But she says, okay, then it's good. But she wants to take one more person's opinion. She asks other Buaji. He says, marriage is good. My husband doesn't care for me. He's completely a useless fellow. But because he's so uncaring, I can turn to the divine. I don't have to even try to be detached. Automatically detachment has come over me. So, you see, it's a very interesting story incidentally. Mira is married. And she marries and goes through everything. But all through it is like she's getting married to Krishna. She's eternally married to Krishna, but she is temporarily married to a man called Rana. It's a very fascinating tale if you look at it like that. And though Rana tries at one point, he also loved her. And fair enough that, he used to feel very jealous that this lady loves Krishna so much more. But at the same time, he later on they even tried to kill her because that not be out of any, because that was the way that how can a lady who is a princess and a queen is going around singing songs and, even in front of the Mughal emperor and all this is just not done. Though she sang in her own masti, the Mughal emperor came to hear her. She didn't go to the court. So, but anyways, she was in that state of, even he tried to kill her. Even that she received with such a joy and gratitude. And that's a state in which we can turn all things to honey. All the sweet, bitter poison of life can be turned to honey. This is the first stage. Successfully navigate through it, then you enter that second stage. That second stage is Tameva Mata, Chapita Tamev, in this sense that I have found everything in the divine. It doesn't matter. Human relationships become very secondary. It has served its purpose. You have found the divine. But if that was the only purpose, then this creation becomes meaningless. Now that's not the case. So there is a third stage where you return back. You have found your own eternal perennial founts of love in the divine. You don't need to go somewhere, thoda pyar de do na. Please, I want little shanti. Get lost from my eyes so that I can be shanti. You have found the shanti, peace inside. You have found the joy inside. You have found love, compassion, everything you have found inside. For everything you turn to the Divine Mother and she more than fulfills. It's a state of supreme felicity. But now you enter into the world of relationship and the same words with which we started carries a new meaning. So if you are a father, be fatherly as the divine is, full of infinite patience. You see, if you are a mother, be a mother as the divine mother, Tameva Mata, full of not only patience, forbearance and giving. If you want to learn what giving means, it is from the divine mother. From mothers we can learn. So this urge to give is the most beautiful movement in love. But we are taught all the time to take, extract, ego-based life. So ego-based life is not our way of life. Our way of life is dharma-based, soul-based, God-based. Discover these elements. Tameva bandhu. Be as a friend as the divine is a friend. Now you see, this is a perfect example, ultimate future of all relationship. These frames are going to get broken, whether we like it or we don't like it. What relationship is going to remain at the end? It is the truth of our origin is a friendly feeling and a universal brotherhood. There is no second thing which is going to remain. All else is only something which will come and go, and there will be some frames. When human beings live in the mind, they need some frames. But always keep that which is beyond the frames. So, the relationship of friendship. Now, it's very interesting when you see Shri Krishna as a friend to Draupadi and to Arjuna. How is he as a friend? He doesn't keep interfering. Oh, you did this wrong. Oh, you did that wrong. He doesn't do that. He lets people evolve through their own ways. This idea of telling a friend constantly, you have done a wrong thing, even in close relationship, husband, wife. So after some time, people get completely confused. But you are not indifferent. You are watching over. Whenever there is a need and a crisis, you are there. You see, this is what I keep telling when parents and children, they have a conflict. I say, you see, allow them to grow, but keep a watch so that when they need, they should have the confidence they can come back to you. They can be with you. You are there with them. So the moment they feel that, well, we are abandoned, this is a very horrible feeling. So they know you are there. You may not approve of everything. Well, you have your own way of life. They have their own way of life. And as long as things are not taking a very critical turn, or they have taken a turn where they may enter into a very dangerous space. But even there, say once, don't keep on trying to change others, putting pressure, because each has to evolve in his own way. As I said, dharma is something which unfolds. There are different stages of development, different levels on which people stand. Depending on their level, they perceive life, they perceive the journey. So we should not try to compel and change others. There is somebody on a physical consciousness, somebody is on a deep spiritual consciousness. So if the person in a spiritual consciousness tells this fellow who is praying to an idol, Are, what is all this idol worship? Don't do that. So what you have done? You have made him neither here nor there. When mother was asked that, why do we have filters in the ashram and doctors in the ashram? Because ultimately all healing has to come from inside. She says, are you people ready for it? Most of the people even here are living in physical consciousness. So when you are in physical consciousness, you have to use physical means. So we have to understand people are in different stages. And yet as a friend, we see Krishna always comes to assist whenever there is a need. And when things are crucial and critical, he is standing by their side. He doesn't tell Arjuna and Yudhishthira, you people messed up your life, you take care of it, why should I mend? No. He comes and stands. At the same time, he harbors a vast universal love deep within himself for everyone, including those characters who are going to be killed. Therefore, he understands Bhishma's viewpoint. But at the same time, he tries to change Karna. He tries to even go to Duryodhana and tell him, don't do this foolish thing. What is it but the sign of a universal love? That he is going to an extent that he is saying, just give 5 villages. That's all. So, 3 things at the end. Tap love from the only source from where it originates, that is the divine. Don't seek love from this or that vessel. In giving love, give freely. Vast universal love. But when you give freely, always remember that there is a law of evolution. Rit Chit. Keep that in mind. Freely giving love doesn't mean doing anything and everything everywhere, suddenly hugging a tree and saying, oh, I am full of love, so I am seeing Krishna in it. See it. Don't start doing that. So because one has to understand the evolutionary process and there are different people at different stages. So if we keep that in mind, that we be a friend to everyone, the sign of the bhakta is he has Maitri Karuna for everyone. So even when you have to fight a battle, sometimes life has battles, it should be fought with the sense of Maitri and Karuna. It's a friendly fight. People may even separate. There should not be bitterness in that. It's possible that 2 people are not meant to be together forever. It's okay. Life is growing, evolving. But let there be love, even in that, the sense of freedom. And we see that one of the best kind of love, I'll close with that, is when 2 people, they went through all the misunderstanding, understanding, super understanding, chaos, conflict, and then they started living a little away. And then they became friends. These people become some of the best friends. Why? Because they know every shades and shites. And they've accepted at the end of the day. Why? Because they have gone through that entire journey. Life is an evolving journey. There is nothing like a ready lunch or a, free plate. I have found my Mr. Perfect, Prince Charming, all these illusions. You have to build life. So there is a joy in it. So it's very nice if a relationship is built, and it has to be built together. It cannot be built by one person. One person can continue to give love. It is like a dependency. And it's okay, there are people who will do that. But it's not building a relationship. Building is always a two-way process. And to understand that it has to evolve and it should percolate from every layer, even if it starts with physical attraction, it's okay. But it should not stop there. It may there has to be common vital interest, common mental kind of companionship where you share certain common elements, common spiritual aspiration, psychic urge. Then relationship becomes complete and beautiful and true and divine. Such a relationship, I don't know whether it exists or not, but it's the ideal we should always hold before us. Because if we don't have an ideal, if we pactize with life as it is, then after some time we begin to degenerate. So let us advance with hope and faith and love in the heart that life should grow beautiful. Human beings should learn at least to not just love each other. It's not possible to only love human beings, but love the totality of creation. And for all this, let us try to discover the divine presence within, who is the source of all love, all peace, all harmony, all beauty, all joy.
Anutta, there's no hand raised. I have a question.
Yes, please.
So, when we talk about being a friend like a Krishna, being like the divine, so it is sometimes gets difficult to get rid of the sense of doership. Even if when he's trying to do it from the highest or the higher in us. So, how does one really cultivate that attitude of
Yes, it's a long process. Doership is one of the last things that goes. If doership has gone, then you are already in that state which Ram Prasad said, Dujendra Lal Roy said, one of my favorite bhajans, Tomar Karmo, Tumi Karoma, Loke Bole Koryami. Doership will go only when we get rid of the need for praise and as its counterpart, the blame and the responsibility for blame, which means the vital has to be converted. It is the vital in man. Intellectually, we understand. But vital needs, that as long as it needs praise, it has to accept, or automatically it'll happen, the responsibility for the blame. So when we stop, being moved by these two things, there is this line in Guru Nanak Dev saying, Astuti Ninda Dau Tyagi Khoje Tab Nirvana. So they will come, but we have to learn to keep passing to her. Then, after a time, there is that equanimity. So, by the persistent application of equanimity, which is an never ending process because always the field expands, which is good in a way because you're progressing in different dimensions, then we can get rid of the doership. It helps to get rid of the doership. Just the intellectual idea doesn't help because, invariably the vital is sitting behind. Dubka hua. It will come up. When the praise comes, you say, so nice. Tell it to be quiet. Tell it to remember what you are doing. Even in intelligence, a simple analysis that, everything belongs to the divine. Actually, one can actually see it. All our instruments of action, the outer, inner, everything is shaped by nature. And where does the power of nature come from? From the divine. So another practice which, again from the Gita is Nishkam Karma. So then the sense of, because doership comes very strongly with Sakam Karma. Because, I am the one who has done it, so I deserve the result. Now, when you understand that all results belong to the divine, then, life flows much more freely and smoothly. People often worry that if we live like that, who will take care? I can tell you that, you'll be taken much, much, much better care than anyone can ever imagine. I can tell with direct experience. But one has to really practice Nishkam Karma. And then one is taken care of in more ways than one. In more ways than 100. Yeah.
I think there was one more question, Sirisha.
Yes.
Hello, Alokda.
Yes, good morning.
Yeah. I have a question. Whenever I have a conversation with outer people, it means people who are in outer life, not with Sri Aurobindo. There's such a, I feel a connection like a wire or a something connecting to them, and it takes a long time to detach from that. It's like I have to consciously ask Divine Mother, can you please detach that wire or connection? It's very suffocating and draining, and sometimes I feel this integral life is very hard. I just want to be with myself
Well,
or
yeah. So you should follow your heart. See, ultimate, of course, is the vision of the divine in everyone and everything. And one has to understand that. So, what one can do is, but initially you need a framework. Suddenly divine is in all is not an easy thing. But what we can do as a framework is try to pick out things which are beautiful in everyone. And it's not difficult. That is one part, that there is something beautiful about everyone. And of course, it doesn't mean randomly we start picking up people. But when you meet people, when there is a willingness to learn something good, you learn about from them, and keep that element, leave the rest. And it's their journey, they have to be on their own journey. And of course, we all know that Mother and Sri Aurobindo are not exclusivist, dogmatic, kind of religion where each one has his own journey, his own path, his own freedom, his own stage of development, and that we must remember. But having said that, if you feel deep within that, well, it drains me, follow that urge. It is your specific to you, and one must respect it. So there are moments, I myself gone through that stage when I didn't feel like conversing with anyone. So if I would go anywhere, because you can't avoid, relatives are there, and people are there. So what do you do? Like in Air Force, I had to attend parties. Party is like a parade. It's not a party. You better go there. And the whole thing was so foolish. I mean, nice. Everything is nice, but just to imagine wasting your wasting your time and all that. But anyway, so what I used to practice was that this is an excellent opportunity for me to be a witness. So even while conversation was going on, so people are holding a daru in one hand and cigarette in another, talking all kinds of nonsense. And I would be standing there. I mean, you have to meet somebody and you are there. So you just keep centered in the heart and just call the Divine Mother. It's a wonderful practice. Dance with the divine wherever you are, regardless of what's happening around. Step back, practice that, practice witnessing. These are moments when you can actually practice. So there is no choice but to discover God everywhere and everyone and everything. This idea of a separate individual cut off from the world. But as I said, it's necessary at some stage. So practice witnessing and Sakshi Bhav. Avoid the company of people, a practical advice, which drains you. And if you have to be there, look at the good things and keep the mind clean of all that is going on, all that gossip. And so stay away from that. Do ma inside. Concentrate in the heart. One of the best moments, two times when I have really felt, one is when I'm driving, its concentration was so beautiful. Another when I am in a group like that. Why? Because you don't have to participate, all nonsensical things are being talked about. So I can easily concentrate here and do, used to do. Ma. So enjoy that time. It's your time given to meditate in everything all around. Okay? None of that is important. So keep yourself inwardly occupied. Okay? And feel amused at what life is without being condescending. Okay, that's important. Yeah.
Thank you, Sakshi. Good evening, Alakta. Once again, thank you so
Good
much
evening.
for this inspiring talk. I had one doubt. You mentioned about the psychic control
Yes.
in speech, which Sri Aurobindo had mentioned.
Yeah.
In that, I was just
Yeah.
going through that, and there's a third point to keep the tone of speech and the wording very quiet and calm and uninsistent. Could you, yeah, I have doubt there, and yeah.
So, yeah, very good. So this comes when the inner state is calm, when the inner state is full of sweetness, which comes with contact with the divine. It's not something which can be done artificially. That's why if you see the letter, it is psychic control of speech. So if you do it artificially, it becomes there are some people who say, "Arey, so nice to meet you." That's artificial. But when the speech flows from the heart and the heart is already sanctified and becomes a sacred space touched by the divine, then it begins to flow. But even otherwise, before that happens, one should be very careful, because through speech we are throwing vibrations. So when we do that, then we have to really get back and remind ourselves. So in the beginning, one has to remind oneself that, well, it's a study of oneself, that, well, maybe I said it too harshly. If I would have expressed this in a beautiful way, things may have been different. So it's a constant self improvement. That's the minimum, and that's very easy, accessible. At the same time, the true sweetness must flow from the heart. Mere external manipulation doesn't help. It often becomes hypocritical, even deceptive. So there is a deceptive sweetness. So that's not what Sri Aurobindo is asking us to do, but to let this speech come from the depths of the heart. Even when we have found or touched the psychic, not found, when you have found, things are different. But still, sometimes the surface consciousness reacts, and speech can be driven by the vital storms. So with practice, it becomes quiet. So practice inner quietude, inner peace, and love for the divine. Love for the divine gives sweetness, warmth, joy and beauty to everything. So to speech also, it gives its own rhythm. It lifts speech to the level of literally a mantra. It gives to speech a rhythm, love for the divine. You'll see this difference, when it's just jnana and when there is love, the two speeches are different. All the four goddesses, when they come together, so, well, that's a different subject altogether. But let the speech flow from the soul. Till then, keep reminding yourself that, this kind of speech is counterproductive. And it comes naturally when we remember our goal. Our goal is not to defeat somebody in an argument or a dispute, to prove a point, or to, the other person say, nobody ever says, yes, you have won and I have lost. So, one thing very sure, that all these discussions, debates and disputes end in a kind of quagmire. So, they are really meaningless. Yet people want us to be dragged into it. Sometimes you have to, because if you don't discuss, that is taken as you don't care. So let it be simple, quiet, paused, nuanced, and it comes with, as we grow in inner quietude. And most importantly, try to remain in contact within while speaking, because speaking is an externalizing movement. And the commonest problem is when we speak is that we flow with the speech and we lose contact. So try to be focused here and then speak automatically, and with practice and growth of consciousness, it will happen.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much, Alokda.
Yeah. Thank you.
Can I ask one question?
Yes, Divya.
Yes.
Maybe childish, but
No, nothing.
like Sakshi said, Alokda, that when you in a friendship, like you said, that being a friend like Krishna, try to be a friend like Krishna. There are times when probably you can hold that ideal, or naturally also it may happen and things. And there are times that you would want to be Draupadi or Arjuna and not Krishna. You want that Krishna to be someone else. You want outwardly also. So what to do in that situation?
Nothing. Love Krishna, keep loving, your being will be molded in his image. See, that is there is no doubt that Arjuna is the ideal. But love Krishna and then you become Arjuna if he wants you to become. But once you love the only lover boy in this whole creation, the master of man and his infinite lover. So when we love him, then we grow into his likeness. Whosoever we love, we'll grow into his likeness. This is one of the fundamental, again, axiomatic truths. So we should be very careful. So when we love, because mental ideals, I understand that it becomes very difficult, because mind cannot change our nature. It can at best color it. So, but the heart, when falls in love with God, then all the sweetness of God, the joy of God, the love of God begins to permeate here. So one has to keep tuning oneself, knowing that one has to be Arjuna, Draupadi and all, that is fine. But ultimately, we are children of God and we have to become like that. We don't have to become another Arjuna or Draupadi, but maybe something greater or something else, something different. And that is up to the divine to make us what he wants us to become. So, love Krishna, and that's the beauty of it. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much, Alokta. We'll end with
Yeah.
a minute of
Yeah.
silence.